Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we dig in deep to analyze the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. I'm Andy Nelson from thenextreel.com.
And I'm Pete Wright, also from The Next Reel.
We are at the beginning of the MCU, and we're getting close to the end of the first film. We're looking at Jon Favreau's 2008 film Iron Man. And joining us this week, we have Niall McGowan from The Bat Minute. Welcome.
Woohoo!
Oh, thanks for having me, guys. I was shocked there when you said, like, oh, we're near the end. I was like, near the end of the MCU already? Jesus. It's like, I don't think you guys are going to live long enough to get to the end of all these movies.
It'll be in our wills. We'll bequeath this series to the children and the children's children so they can all continue.
Generations hence. I have to say, it's about time that you're on the show, Niall, because I feel like we can't really do this show justice until we have a movie-by-minute podcaster on who also talks about a wealthy industrialist wearing a suit.
Yeah, that is true, yeah. And actually, considering like what we're going to be covering next year, because we're currently mid Batman Returns, like the opening shots of this minute are just like, this is ripped off from Batman Forever. Like, it's like directly, like, in particular the fact considering Jon Favreau is in Batman Forever, it's like, oh, that's where you got it from.
Right, there's a love story in here somewhere, right?
Well, we are looking at, like we said, it's toward the end of this film. We're looking at minute 111 of Iron Man. On today's show, the minute starts with Tony calling out for Pepper very quietly. And it ends with Obi saying he's never had a taste for this sort of thing. We are mid hide and seek game up on the roof between Tony and Obi in their suits of iron. And this is this little phone call. It's funny because so Tony calls out to Pepper here, and I guess they've been on the phone the whole time. It's kind of a confusing thing because he called her as she ran out of the building earlier before the Iron Monger burst out of the parking lot, and then they got into the big iron fisticuffs across the freeway and up into the air, and now they're on the roof. But I guess he's been connected to Pepper the whole time because he just calls out her name and she's there listening. So has she been listening to the whole fight and everything?
Well, this is the beginning of a thing that, like, it's one of those things I've had to just learn to accept in all the Marvel movies, where at least you see that Pepper has like a little Bluetooth like headphone thing in.
Right.
But I remember at one point, like mid Avengers and stuff, they're just walking around, nothing visible in their ears, but just going like, Tony, you have to go here. And it's just like, how are they talking to him? Like, what, did I have to press a button? Did I have to do anything? There's just at some point in the Marvel movies, it's just, you just have to accept that, yes, somehow they have technology on them at all times.
All times.
That they are constantly able to just talk to whoever they want, who might be anywhere. Let's just do some high-tech gimmickry where you don't even have to like tap a thing to go or they used to have to put their hands to their ears. I don't think they even do that anymore.
Well, it's like Tony has invented his own Stark version of Siri, and so he doesn't even need to say, "Hey, blank." I don't want to say her name because she's sitting right next to me, and she'll start talking to me. But but now he can just say Pepper. And that's his system's cue to kind of get her on the line. I guess that is what he's done. It might make sense.
I mean, there's going to be a pain in the ass if he's at the dinner, though, and he's just like, oh, hey, can you pass me the pepper? Oh, no, sorry. No, I didn't.
She's just waiting the whole time. She's always there. She's still, as far as we gather, standing in the parking lot.
Right. She's been standing in the same spot for minutes now.
As we talk about it, for it seems like a month. She's been just standing in the parking lot waiting for action.
I mean, I've got questions about the location of Pepper Potts towards the end of this week, where it seems like she vanishes for where she was and then kind of reappears or something, but we'll get to that later.
Right.
Well, and I still think it's funny that she's standing in the parking lot. There's been this fight raging on. Nobody else from Stark Industries, especially the guy sitting in the parking booth, just a few feet from Pepper,
still there,
has not come out to do anything. He's
playing Sudoku, man.
He is. He's very into his game.
You think that's going to be the same guy who was in like the Avengers when he's just like, that guy over there is playing Galaga. He hoped we didn't notice him, but we did.
And he was playing Galaga. Yeah, that's totally that guy.
Yeah, he's just like, I'm focused. He's it's kudos to him. He's got his center, and he's found his focus, and he's good at closing off the outside world. I don't know if that works when you're a security guard.
We should all be so lucky.
Right.
I do have to ask though, because you would be the guys who would know. Has Favreau ever acknowledged this little face mask thing that the visualization of Tony in the helmet as being from Batman Forever? Because I'm sure you've talked about that before. Like, it's directly the thing when Bruce Wayne slides down in his chair and then he's talking to Alfred, and it's an identical kind of layout and stuff.
I haven't, because I feel like I've generally closed my mind to some of those earlier Batman films, and I don't remember that at all in that film. That's in Batman Forever, huh?
It's very early on. Yeah, it's when it's just after he meets Edward Nygma and he sees the bat signal and he goes into his office and he just a little sort of hatch opens underneath his desk and he slides down. He goes into some sort of bat bullet thing that zooms him across the city.
Right, the luge thing, right?
Yeah. And there's a close up of Val Kilmer's face, and then just identical to this. When then a little screen of Alfred pops up and he's just talking to him like Tony talks to Pepper or anybody in these movies. And it's just the fact that Jon Favreau directed this. He's in the scene before that scene happens in Batman Forever. So it strikes me that he would have been trying to think of how do I visualize this? Oh, I'll just do what they did in that.
That's really interesting.
It's either that or he was really into the video for No Surprises by Radiohead. He's like, I really want to get that in there somewhere.
I don't know. That's equally believable, actually. I'm looking for images. Do you have a still of it? I'd like to see it. I can't seem to find it on... The internet is failing me right now.
Yeah, I'd love to check that out too. We'll have to post it in the show notes so people can kind of compare. But it's an interesting lineage. And even the article that we read about the creation of the HUD and everything that they've kind of done to kind of create it, nothing references Batman Forever. They reference 2001 as a source. They reference Minority Report, all these different kind of more modern sources. Well, the more modern source with Minority Report as far as the information sliding around. And 2001, just as far as kind of all of the stuff kind of reflecting around his face and his helmet. Those are kind of the reference points they talked about. But knowing that Favreau was in Batman Forever, I think that does seem like a logical pull as something that he likely probably pointed them to at one point just to use as a reference. So pretty interesting.
I think I've got a shot here. I'll send it to Andy here on the Facebook if you don't mind.
Sure. And I do think it's as we're waiting for that. I want to know, what do you guys think? Do you think that we have a shot of Tony starting this minute, and then it cuts to Pepper, and then we cut back to Tony, and he's now facing the other direction? Does it look to you like they just flipped his face? I swear, it's just they just took the footage and flipped it.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what they did. Yeah.
It's the easy way. It's the easy way.
Yeah, he's got there's a blemish, like a zit under his under the left side eye in the first shot, and it really moves. It's on the right side. Yes, they totally flipped it.
Yeah.
Why would they need to do that? What is the motivation behind that? Do we really need him looking off into the distance, frame right in that second scene? Does that make a dramatic difference to us?
I think my hunch as to why they did it is because in the rule of cinema, as you have your actors and you have kind of the people cutting between people, it makes sense more sense in a conversation when you're not crossing the line. And so Tony initially is looking, he's looking screen right. And Pepper, when we cut to her, she turns her head and she's looking screen right. And so I think because of that, it makes it easier for us as an audience to kind of look at it like a conversation when we see his face and her face intercut where they're not necessarily looking the same direction.
I was thinking about that, but I was wondering if that really holds true when we're looking at this. It's such a manipulated image, with the HUD up on top of it. They're not in the same location. Does it play as poorly? I almost want to just flip that first one and see if it makes a huge difference, because it doesn't to me.
Well, I also think, like, at the end of the last minute, Iron Man, he's looking. We see him up on the roof. He's peeking around the corner, and he sees the Iron Monger kind of prowling around, and he kind of moves his face. When we cut to Tony's face, it's the same direction as the Iron Man suit that we saw in the last frame, kind of looking screen right. Now, later, when we are looking at Tony and we cut back to Iron Man, which is about second 15, now they're both looking screen left. And so I think that's another reason that they did it, just to kind of connect that a little better.
Yeah. It's been so long since I've watched that last minute. It's hard to remember.
What do you guys think of Gwyneth Paltrow in general, though? Because I don't know, maybe it's just the way that she's portrayed in the UK. But there's sort of like a kind of general dismissal of her as a lot of, like, just through tabloids and stuff. There's a kind of vibe about Gwyneth Paltrow where it's just like, like whenever she pops up in conversation. And I'm not too sure exactly what it is, because she simultaneously seems to be like a very, very boring person and also a complete weirdo. So it's kind of like, I'm always sort of like, I'm always curious as to why she became so popular, because she was really big. I'm assuming it's because she was engaged to Brad Pitt and stuff. And of course, then she's the friggin' daughter of Blythe Danner and stuff.
Well, yeah, and obviously she was in some bigger projects in the 90s, and she won an Oscar for and all that sort of stuff. So, I mean, she certainly had I would say, a peak back then. And I think, I feel like, and I don't know if this is completely correct, but I feel like, everything that's gone on with her as far as, her relationship with, what's his name from Coldplay, and
Chris Martin,
and
Martin.
the kids, and just all the stuff that she's done, because I feel like in the last decade, she largely has kind of stepped away from film. Like, she was real busy in the 90s, in the 2000s. And then once kind of Iron Man hit, she's only been in, as I look at her IMDb credits, she's only been in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 movies that have not been in the Marvel films. So I think kind of she's, maybe that's why, because it, to a certain extent, it's become less about her as an actress and more about just kind of, just the stuff that she's doing outside of film, maybe.
Well, and yes, unless we forget, she built a $250 million company. Like, Goop is a serious business for her, and you can kind of see where that has gone. Whatever you think of her, like, her approach to health and wellness is, ranges is on the Daffy scale at times. I think that's she doesn't get a lot of serious praise in the media as a result of some of that and the lawsuits that have been a part of it. But in this movie, I actually think she's great as Pepper. I really enjoy her as Pepper. I really don't like her as Pepper in these last few minutes. It is a running joke for us that, Pepper's in the parking lot, because it's ridiculous that Pepper's in the parking lot, right? She is she's the thing that we just have to keep her in the park. We're literally putting Pepper in the parking lot so that we can use her for these very few magical events that we need. She loses complete agency, in the character, and becomes this sort of Doyleist tool to allow magic to happen in the screenplay. And that's a thing that frustrates me, because I think she has been great for so long.
Yeah. I did feel a bit bad though, and when they announced that Endgame will be the last we see of her as Pepper Potts, and there's the kind of world kind of went, oh no, wait, stop, come back,
Don't go,
no, really, don't go.
I do love her as Pepper, and I think a lot of it is just, I feel like she and Robert have found just a really great chemistry, and they work well together, and it really kind of was founded here in this film. I just love their chemistry, and I love their relationship. And she largely hasn't been in these films except when it is involving Iron Man and that, and so I really appreciate that, and I think it's nice to see her doing that, even if she's kind of fallen into kind of the Daffy Goop world, and that's been affected otherwise.
the thing is, like, I actually do like her in these movies as well. I don't want to just come off like I'm coming in to dump on Pepper Potts or anything, but I do just know her around these parts. There's a kind of vibe about, like, anytime she's mentioned in the papers and stuff. There's a bit of a kind of an eye roll, implied in the writing, because it's like, oh yes, the what do they call it? Consciously uncoupling and all that business, like these weird terminology she'll come out with, and the fact that she called her kid Apple and things like that. So, like, I'm all up for coming out with unique names for your kids and stuff, but like calling your kid Apples, it's like, well, the thing is, you would be like, I think again that might be another reason why people wouldn't like her, is that in any normal circumstances, that's setting that kid up to get like bullied for life, basically. But then the thing is, that kid won't be going to like a normal school. He'd be going to like super rich, like friggin' like proper big private education.
Well, to her credit, as daffy as I think sometimes she comes off in the media, there recently, I think it was earlier March, she sat down on Armchair Expert with Dax Shepard and did a 2-hour conversation about, everything from all of this stuff, conscious uncoupling, intentional parenting, all of this kind of stuff. And you know what? She actually, you listen to her in that kind of an environment, and she takes an interesting sort of ownership and comes off with, I think, a much more redeeming strength when you hear her talk about it, when it's not filtered through the media. I mean, it's easier to understand why she's grounded in this kind of worldview when she's telling it herself. I may not necessarily agree with it, but I do think it's good to hear from her. And that episode, it was episode 88, I think, was a particularly good conversation. So if anybody's interested, that's a good place to go.
Well, but that's the kind of thing, though, because you do get like put through the visor of the tabloid media. So like I remember things like when she broke up with Chris Martin, there was words out in the press that, like, oh yeah, apparently all Chris Martin's friends are saying, oh, thank God he finally got away from that woman and stuff, and it gave her this bad reputation. But literally, it was like completely unsourced information. It was just like one of our insiders tells us that a friend of Chris Martin has said this. It's like, who? Like, what? I'm supposed to take that? It's like, oh, that's definitely happened then.
And she talks all about that and that whole experience on this episode. It's really interesting to hear kind of her approach. So it's worth it if you're curious. Meanwhile, back at the arc reactor.
Yeah, back at the arc reactor. So Tony has Pepper go inside. He kind of does an exposition dump here to just kind of give her all the specifics of things that she has to do, and hence all the things that the audience is coming to expect now about having to overload the reactor and blast the roof and make sure it's clear or I'll get fried and all this sort of stuff. It's very much exposition dumping.
Yeah.
And then Pepper sets to work. And what I think there's an interesting moment here, because Pepper starts going inside, and as she starts walking in, you see all of the glass from the glass entrance to this big arc reactor room. It has all been shattered, and at no point do we ever see this happen. Stain didn't shoot it when he's trying to shoot her and shoots Iron Man instead, and their whole fight. We see nothing that shows anything about this getting shattered. In fact, when we see there's a shot, a wide shot as Iron Monger and Iron Man take off for the first time and chase each other in the sky. It's a wide shot of the front of this as we see Pepper see Iron Monger fly up, and it's all still intact. So at no point do we ever see this shattered until this moment when all of a sudden it's all shattered.
Is it a deleted scene? Or
there's no deleted scene that they show us, but there is in the script, and this is the only thing that I've been able to find that references this in some way, is the fact that when Tony comes flying down and crashes into Ironmonger and pushes him back down into the kind of the hole in the ground, that's the only reference there that it says the atrium glass ruptures outward from the underground impact, and that's it. But even later, we see in the film when Pepper's watching them take off that it's still intact. So it's a weirdly done thing where all of a sudden, I guess it's just because now they're on the roof fighting and supposedly that's what did it. I don't know. I guess maybe in context of Iron Monger when he's shooting at Tony in the last week's minutes up on the roof, that perhaps that caused it all to break. I don't know. It's kind of a strange thing.
It's very strange. I don't know how it would break like that. I mean, there's so much glass and all the shards are so uniformly tiny. I don't know how it does that. There's science, I guess.
And I spoke too soon. He hadn't started shooting at Tony. That'll be later this week.
Right.
So there's no reason why this glass is all broken. Like, it's completely shattered. But it is funny to watch Pepper kind of stepping daintily through it to go inside and start flipping switches and all this sort of stuff, which she
in
does.
Her open-toed, ridiculous heels.
Yeah, which is great.
Then we get to the stuff that's frustrating for me.
Before we do, I just have to point out, so Pepper is flipping all these big switches, right? Unless this is what frustrates you, but she starts flipping these switches, right? These great big panels of switches.
Mm-hmm.
And he says that he's got to open up all the circuits. But when she flips this, it already says open. And when she pulls the switch, it switches to closed. So technically, I think she's working backward as to what she's supposed to be doing. Luckily, the cut is so fast that you only notice it if you're freeze framing it and watching it 1 minute at a time.
Right.
For some reason, this just reminds me, because of the type of switch and stuff that she's having to pull down, of that bit in Jurassic Park when Laura Dern has to go and she's having to do a whole big thing, like the same kind of switches and stuff as well. Maybe there's something amongst like directors who are like, oh, those type of switches look cool. Get those in your high tense situations if you can. If you have to flip on a switch, make sure it's one of those things.
And make sure to get all of the switches. I want 15 of them on this wall. Well, I don't care. More switches.
Well, and Favreau has certainly shown us in past minutes how much he likes doing homages. You know, we've had the Star Wars wipes and other Star Wars kind of shots, and we've had references to Alien. It's entirely possible that he kind of threw these in because of that scene.
Yeah.
So that's the switches. And then is the fight what you wanted to talk about, Pete? Is that what frustrates you?
Andy. Yes. Yes, it's frustrating. We get all this switching. Then Iron Man jumps up on his back, on Iron Monger's back, right? This cut, when he says, Iron Man says, this looks important, and reaches into the back of Iron Monger's neck and pulls out this giant tail of cables and turns off Iron Monger's eyes and targeting system. That is incredibly annoying for me because, well, for two reasons. First of all, it's like they snatch stupid from the jaws of smart. It makes so much more sense that Tony has the experience and intelligence in building these systems that it would allow him to find the right wires without having this indicated on the HUD, which says weak point located. The HUD's already broken. That makes no sense to me. And even dumber, why did Stain and his engineers build a suit that allows these wires to be found by just any schmo who happens to be taller than him and yank them out? I find that they should be, I don't know, protected somehow, maybe hidden.
There is that, I know they did make that prequel movie where it turns out like Mads Mikkelsen was working on the Ironmonger suit. And he intentionally put in that weakness. There was a whole big thing, and there's people going to war over it and stuff. And then for some reason he showed up in Doctor Strange, and he's like a different character, and like, what the hell?
Totally different. Okay, fair point. I'll reach. Still, I find myself frustrated at the sequence.
It works for me.
I knew it would.
It's Tony being techie. It's Obadiah and his team rushing through things to get things put together and not worrying so much about this sort of thing because he's really just wanted to get it done and play with it.
I mean, I will say, I would agree with that 100% because everything about the Ironmonger suit, I have a disdain for its design because it is just like if you were going around this thing, this is supposed to be like, oh yes, bigger and better and all this, but it just looks like this big clunky mess. So I do think that it is like it's a rushed job. So things like that would be. And again, you've got scientists working on it who just aren't Tony Stark. Like they haven't got this anywhere near the level. Like they could get the thing to work properly, but they mightn't think of like, oh yeah, we should probably do this and that for it as well, because they're just not they're not up to scratch. They're not on his level.
Yeah, right. and you can tell, I mean, once you see that, you're reminded so many of the critical components for the Iron Monger suit are external, right? All the hydraulics, all the everything looks like a weak point. Like every joint is a weak point. How is he able to move? And why did in that case, why did it take Tony so long to find it? It just feels like that should have been easier to disable. So I don't know. This is one of those things that
does remind me just harking back to that scene that has like the one big line in Iron Man that I do quote. It's like one line I remember is just Tony Stark built this in a cave with a box of scraps. It's the one line that sticks out at me in the whole movie for some reason.
Totally.
To your point, Pete, though, as far as this little moment when Tony jumps on his back and starts kind of trying to find ways to make the playing field a little more even, I guess you could say.
This is the Scrappy Doo moment, I think, is what we're going to refer to it as.
Well, it's sure. David and Goliath, I guess you could say, but Scrappy Doo works. The thing that I find funny that I question, and I don't know if I have as many problems with it because, again, largely when you're watching the film and not studying it minute at a time, it just plays really nicely. But I do wonder, okay, so Gwyneth is downstairs, Pepper is downstairs doing all of the switch flipping that we've seen and button pushing. And Tony says, I'm going to buy you some time. But what is he... Obadiah doesn't know that Pepper's doing anything downstairs. So what is he like? Why doesn't he just keep hiding and let Pepper finish pushing all these buttons? Why does he have to all of a sudden jump in? And it's the hero moment. We've got to kind of do this. But really, he's not buying time for anything. I mean, to buy time, he just kind of keeps hiding. I don't know. That's the thing for me. I'm like, I don't know what he's buying time for her to do by
is there some assumption that he believes Stain knows she's right below him doing things that are of ill intent?
Yeah,
and they didn't telegraph that at all.
I mean, he has to keep Obadiah on the roof. I guess that's it. But again, he could still do that just by kind of hiding up there. I don't know.
I do also think just that line though, like I'll buy you some time, like that adds to tension as well in the whole. It kind of it really makes you feel like on your toes. It was the same thing of him just hiding around and stuff. This just like tips it into like keeping it at peak excitement. I know we'll be talking in a couple of minutes time about a deleted sequence that not to spoil what I'm going to say in that episode. But a sequence that like would have completely evaporated the levels of excitement in like a very big moment. I think at this point, everything's sort of just designed to keep this thing as sort of light and peaked in terms of intensity as they can.
Right.
We're in the climax. You want the hero and villain fighting, not playing hide and seek. You want a lot of fast things happening. I mean, it totally makes sense. It really does.
And they've already done a great job of changing our sort of sensibility of that sequence, right? As we open this minute with all of the smoke, and they have just enough of the sneaking around and a couple of those little kind of horror thriller shots that I think we get enough of it. Now we're ready to move on to some faster paced, surprising action. And it's good.
Yeah. We do, as we get toward the end of this minute, we cut back to Pepper and we see her pushing buttons for the line relays. And then we see her flipping some other switches. These are ECCD 1 through 4. What I found online, some abbreviations to see if there was any real ECCD that this could be. And the only ones that made sense as far as this particular world were either electron, cyclotron current drive or electromagnetically coupled coaxial dipole. Who knows if the production design team actually was using one of those or if they were just putting some letters in there to make it look important.
Wow.
Regardless, what I do actually like about all of this is Tony gave Pepper some fairly vague instructions. We need to overload the reactor and blast the roof. What it seems is that Pepper is actually like pretty smart. Like she goes in and she knows the switches to flip, the buttons to push, the dials to turn. I feel like Pepper is actually portrayed here as somebody who actually has the smarts in this company to actually understand what she's doing in order to overload this system. I end up, as I watch this and kind of look at what she's doing, I end up finding myself appreciating what they did with her here.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with that. Yeah. Like it paints in her lights where it's, you know, she comes across like she's not just like Tony's secretary or something. Like she could, if need be, step into like a major leading. Well, she does step into a major leading part of the Star Company and stuff. And so, portraying her in that light of like, oh, she's, you know, incredibly intelligent and stuff as well. She clearly has, you know, an understanding of, you know, the things that she's working with, like in and around. She kind of has an idea of what's going on around her as well. So she's not just there to tick boxes and you know, just take friggin' coffee orders or things like that. Like she's a proper, like a woman who could, you know, she's on the way up.
Was she portrayed this way in, you know, with this level of savvy in the comics?
No, but it was a different time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was a very different time. And she ends up, just because of the nature of the story, I mean, she falls in love with Happy and they kind of go off and start a family at some point because their lives have been threatened too often by being around the world of Iron Man, where they've been put in harm's way and they leave it. So I don't recall. And if they have, I mean, obviously the story's continued over a long time. It's entirely possible they've done more with Pepper and I just haven't seen it.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
So we kind of finish watching Pepper. We go back up to the roof and we see Obadiah free himself of the little creature on his back. He grabs Iron Man by the head and flings him across. And we have Tony landing square in the middle of the big kind of the circular the glass roof overlooking the arc reactor, and he's on the glass panel staring straight down into it, and he's helmetless. So clearly, in the process of doing this, Obadiah has managed to rip his helmet off in a way that I don't think it's meant to come off. And Tony's head is intact. I'm a little surprised that it worked out so well for Tony.
Tony and his chin, which should have peeled up over his face. Right. Let's just get that out of the way.
Oh, yeah. It's I'm not quite sure of that, but it does kind of fall into, I guess is it Spider-Man that started this trope of like the superhero unmasking in the kind of the climactic battle? Or do you guys recall that happening before the Spider-Man films?
I think, yeah, but that was the one. Because I don't know if it was done.
I guess Batman. You should, yeah. I mean, Batman, was it?
I mean, in Batman Returns, he does take off the mask. That's when he's talking to Selina and stuff. It's kind of after he's defeated the Penguin and stuff already. So
it kind of conveniently
like
rips off, right?
Yeah. And it's like he has the disappearing eye makeup as well. This is one of the most glaring continuity errors in the whole movie.
And I don't know how much you would count like the superhero unmasking as Clark Kent takes off his glasses, you know, in Superman 2, right?
But it's very, I think around the time of Spider-Man, it became very apparent that this is like, no, the star of the movie wants FaceTime.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
So that's why, like, I think in the first one, I didn't mind it because it's like, oh yeah, his mask is like all torn up and stuff. And then the second one's like, he's taking off the mask again? What's going on here? And then the third one, the same day, it's like, oh, I get it. I see what's happened here. And then by the time, like, I remember one of the first clips I saw of, like, the Andrew Garfield movie had him as Spider-Man, then just taking his mask off in front of some kid to be like, oh, no, don't worry, I'm going to save you. And just but instantly like, oh, for Christ's sake, dude, just keep that mask off for 6 seconds with you.
Right.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, and I think the HUD has actually helped a lot with the Iron Man films because you can show Tony's face while he's still in his suit without just having to have, you know, us looking at Iron Man the whole time. And I think for actors, that's something that they certainly appreciate.
Yeah.
Well, and not just that. I mean, in this scene, we need to have a face-to-face showdown between Bridges and RDJ. Like, we need to see that. And so they had to take the helmet off. They had to open the clamshell on Iron Monger. I mean, we had to have that. As an audience, not just in contracts, you know. I mean, we have to see it.
Yeah. And it is so great watching Iron Monger kind of open up like that. So that reveal of him is just, it's really cool to see him in there. And I mean, he's in full on villain mode now. So of course it plays a little strongly, but it's okay because it works in context of the villain.
It reminds me a lot of an Independence Day when they like open up the alien bodysuit, and then when it's talking to like Bill Paxton after it's killed friggin' Brent Spiner and stuff. Or no, he's not dead, it turns out in the second one. But you remember that there's a little thing inside this big open suit that it's wearing. And just, Jeff Bridges is sitting there in the center of the thing, just like, it really reminds me of that alien outfit they had.
That's right.
And what I do love about this is, they had built, Stan Winston's team, they had built this full, 10-foot suit that I can't remember. It was like 5 different people operating it. Now, I don't know if all of this is that suit or if they've done some CG enhancements, but it looks like at least a good chunk of it is the actual suit and, the work that they're doing to operate it. It's really cool looking. I only had one other note for this moment, and it's the music track by Ramin Djawadi that's playing here. It's named Arc Reactor, and it's reactor with a K instead of a C, just proving yet again that it's not just the screenwriters who don't know how to spell these words. It's also the composer. Like sometimes it's Arc ARK, sometimes it's Arc ARC. Now we have reactor with a K. I swear, they're all over the place. I'm glad it's never written in the film because it would probably be different every time.
I mean, it could be like when you see the sky beam that erupts later in the week. That's very reminiscent of the end of Raiders of the Lost arc. So maybe they would try to be clever and be like, "It's Arc Reactor" because of this one scene.
It is the power of God. I don't know why I'd never seen it before.
I don't have anything else for this minute. What about you guys?
This whole week is a week of cliffhanger minutes. Like, I want to know what the end of the next thing that happens is. He's got his helmet. Iron Monger has Iron Man's helmet in his hand. What could possibly happen next?
Yeah, it's a very Shakespearean moment we're leaving here.
Truly.
Yeah. All right. Well, Niall, thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys. I'm always happy to bridge the gap between the DC and the Marvel worlds. So
right.
It's like, why can't we all just get along?
Right. Do you remind everybody where they can find you online?
Oh, yeah. You can get Bat Minutes, where we're doing what you guys are doing, only with the Batman movies, starting with Tim Burton's 89 Batman movie up to and including Batman and Robin. We don't think we're going to do the Dark Knight trilogy because there's someone already doing that. So you can get that show on all your normal podcatchers and iTunes and Spotify now, I believe. And you can get us on Twitter, Facebook, and all that stuff. Just if you just type in Bat Minute, we'll pop up. And I do know our one distinction is on Instagram. We are the Bat Minute. So I think that's about as good a plug as I can do because I'm terrible at doing plugs.
Well, I think people can probably look up Bat Minute and they will be able to track you down.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, that is it for today's show. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to the show for free at marvelmovieminute.com. Join us over in our Discord chat room and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Next Reel. And if you like what we do and you want to support us and get some cool stuff, become a patron over at thenextreel.com/Patreon. Until next time, true believers,